Okay, this lesson is lesson 58, and we are talking more about percents and throwing in some word problems. There's only 3 examples today, and the first 2 are pretty straightforward. I would say the third one is the hardest. So if you're just waking up or just trying to get your mind around things, luckily the first 2 are going to be a lot like what we've already done. So let's go ahead and start it. Example 1 there says Jordan, Carly, and Isaac have only 20 donuts left. If they began with 80 donuts, oh boy, guys, did you eat them all? I hope you guys shared, because that's a lot of donuts. What percent of the donuts remain? Okay, so they have 20 donuts left, and they started with 80. And so what you got to do is figure out, and they're saying, what percent of the donuts remain? Okay, so what percent? There's your unknown right there. What percent? Okay, so what I would say is, what percent, we're going to call that x over 100. What percent of, and you remember I'm writing of really faintly because I'm going to erase that, but we're going to say what percent of the donuts remain. So of the initial donuts, of the 80 donuts that you started with, remain. So what percent of 80 is 20? Okay, or is, and you know, now we do equals. So instead of, we know that's a multiplication. So what percent of 80 equals 20? And there you go. And now from here, we should be able to solve this, okay? And again, I see a great opportunity to cross-cancel. To help give you a visual, I might put that 80 over 1 so that we can see here that your 80 and 100 can be cross-canceled. The first way I see is we have a 0 here and a 0 here, so that means we get to cross zeros out. So now we have 8 and 10. So if we cross out, let's see, I know 2 goes into both of those. 2 goes into 8 4 times, and it goes into 10 5 times. Okay, so to help us see where we're at now with all this crossing out and 4s and 5s and x's, let's go ahead, and it looks like this. 4/5 x equals 20. Okay. Okay, so now let's get x by itself, and if you recall, when we have a fraction next to an x, we multiply by its reciprocal to both sides to make it legal. And so now this all cancels out, makes a 1x equals, and now we've got more cross-canceling, I see 20 over 1 and 5/4. Well, 4 goes into 20 5 times, 4 goes into itself once, so now we've got 5 times 5, and we've got 25. So I go back to my original question and say, okay, is 25% of 80 20? It is, because 25% is actually a fourth. So if we multiply 20 times 4, we get 80. So you might have even already noticed that 20 was a fourth of 80, and therefore you can decide that that's 25%. So that one wasn't too terrible. It was kind of nice. So we're going to go ahead and say 25% of the donuts. Okay, and there's your final answer. So I should see this on your notes when I see your paper. Okay, example 2, McKenna and Avery have 75 thingamabobs. Okay, now they want to give CJ 20% of their thingamabobs. So how many thingamabobs do they give to CJ? Okay, so they have 75 and they're going to get rid of 20%. So we need to figure out what 20% of 75 is to figure out how much CJ is going to get. So we want 20% of 75 is what? Okay, so we can either do it with fractions or decimals. The last one I did, we used fractions, so I'm going to do decimals for this one. So to convert 20% to a decimal, I'm going to say 0.2 times 75 equals x. Okay, so all now we need to do is do a little bit of a multiplication problem. I'm going to do it over here to the side. 75 times 0.2. Okay, so I actually know that 75 times 2 is 150. So I'm going to write that there. I always think of money when I think of 75 cents. Tip is a dollar, you know, and is $1.50. So, but we have 0.2 times 75, not 2 times 75. So I see I have one decimal behind the decimal point. So I'm going to give 1 down here and put it right there. So now I just found out that 15 is 20% of 75. And I think, okay, does that make a reasonable answer? And I do. I know that 7.5 is 10% because you just move the decimal over to find 10%. So 15 is actually double 7.5. So there's a lot of ways to do mental math to decide that, yes, that is a reasonable answer. So 15, now remember we like to label our work. So 15 thing, and then make sure you spell thingamabobs right. I just learned how to spell it tonight. Thingamabobs. All right, there you have it. And I'm sure CJ's super excited. Thank you, McKenna and Avery. All right, here's the last one and the most hard, or most difficult. All right, Billy and Bob have 600 raisins, or they hide 600 raisins. Weirdest question ever. They actually have 2 people hiding raisins in the book. I have no idea why, whatever. And the weird thing is they do this more than once. They don't just hide 600 raisins once. They actually have been doing it each month, which is interesting. I don't know who they're hiding them for or what. I don't know. So anyway, this month they did 600 raisins. This is 60% more than they hid last month. Okay, so this is the hard one. 60% increase from last month's raisin hide. Okay, so I don't know if you guys recall, but there was a lesson where we did something where we did an increase. And that's where instead of finding 60% of 600, we need to figure out what, or not, yeah, it's not 60% of, or 600 is not 60% of last month, okay? This month, let's just put this down. This month is 600, okay? Last month, so let's just get this clear. If this month is 600, this is 60% more than they hid last month. So last month was less than 600, okay? So they increased. So last month it was less than 600, now they're at 600. And they increased by 60%. So if we do last month plus 60%, we're going to have this month. So this is just giving you a bit of a visual, but what that means is altogether 600, see if you get this, is equals 160% of last month. And we're going to call last month X. Okay? So they did last month's, which was 100%, plus 60% more this month. So we're going to say 100 together. That makes 160%. Now the book does a diagram. I don't really understand their diagrams, so that's why I don't use it. But go ahead and look at that in the book and see if that will help you out if you're totally confused on where we got 160%. Okay, this probably is one of the most difficult things to teach in the way that this book does it. So If you feel a little confused, that's okay. That's not going to happen very often this year with this book. Okay, so now how do we solve this? Well, we could do fractions again. 600 equals 160 over 100 times x. Okay, well, and I see that I can cross out 2 zeros right away. So what we have is, let's see if I have room here, 600 equals, well, and not only can I cross it out, 16 over 10, that's the same as 8 fifths. Okay, so we have 600 equals 8 fifths times x. Okay, then we multiply both sides by 8 fifths, or sorry, 5/5/8 by the reciprocal. I think I'm so concerned about falling off the paper here that I'm not thinking straight. So, okay, so now I'm going to take it over here just so we can see it better. That is, we've got 5/8 times 600 equals x. Okay, and now we can cross multiply, because I always know I can cross multiply when I got even numbers. So I know half of 8 is 4, half of 600 is 300. So then I can even break those down. 4 goes down to 2, and I'll just show you. If you're not sure, then you can kind of keep breaking them in half. You see what I mean? Oh, and then I also know that 2 goes into 150. 75 times. So now we're down to 75 times 5. So I like cross canceling. It means I don't have to multiply these big numbers. So 75 times 5, I'm going to do it here just to make sure there's no questions as to where we got these numbers. 5 times 7 is 35, so we get 375. Okay, so what does 375 mean? What are we talking about? Okay, we're saying that last month they hid 375 raisins, and this month they did 60% more and got 600. Okay, so they did 375 plus 60% more. So that actually does sound like it makes sense. So it's over here, but if I want to show nicely for my teacher, I'm going to say 375 raisins. Okay, now you guys might have questions on these types of problems, and feel free to ask me. I might do a few extra in the book and post them online or do them in class. All right, and that's it for the lesson 58. After that, you just have the second page, which is all practice. Okay, you've got about A, B, C, 3 practice problems, so you are set.